The US and Iran have confirmed they'll hold talks in Oman on Friday, hoping to reach a deal to avoid war. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Aragchi says he'll attend the meeting in person. Well, Tehran insists the focus must be on its nuclear program and lifting of US sanctions. Washington, though, maintains the threat of military action remains, with a significant US military buildup in the region. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says talks must be wide-ranging for progress to be made.
I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people. They've expressed an interest in meeting and talking. If they change their mind, we're fine with that too. We prefer to meet and talk. I'm not sure you can reach a deal with these guys, but we're going to try to find out.
Well, tension's been rising ever since violent protests in Iran broke out in late December. Rights groups say thousands of people were killed. In recent days, a 3-week internet blackout ended, but heavy restrictions still remain. In an interview with US media, President Donald Trump has issued a threat to Iran's supreme leader. Al Jazeera's chief US correspondent, Alan Fisher, reports from Washington, D.C.
He was asked, should the supreme leader of Iran be worried? And he said he should be very worried. Of course, it got that against the backdrop of a massive military armada making its way towards Iran at the moment, and the fact that the United States has talked on several occasions of possibly striking Iran again. Remember, they did so back in June, and Donald Trump referenced that during his interview, said that he had obliterated the Iran nuclear program and that he had heard that they had started plans to restart. And if they did, he said they would be very, very sorry. He was also asked about the support he gave to the protesters in Iran, saying that they had their back. He insists that they still do, and it was hoping that negotiations with the Iranians may lead somewhere.
Well, let's bring in Mohsen Milani. He's Executive Director at the Center for Strategic and Diplomatic Studies at the University of South Florida. And he joins us live from Tampa in Florida. Mohsen, so Iran insists the meeting must focus on its nuclear agenda and the lifting of US sanctions, but American officials are demanding that talks go way beyond nuclear. So how far apart are both sides, and what hope do you have for these talks?
Thank you very much for having me on your show. I think the region today is on the brink of a major war, and diplomacy must be given a chance. However, there are serious obstacles in the way of diplomacy, mostly in terms of two issues. One issue is irreconcilable threat perceptions. Tehran believes that the 12-day war ended up in a ceasefire, but the war has continued. And they believe that what has happened in Iran in the past month or so in terms of the protest movement is the phase 2 of that unfinished war. Moreover, they believe that unless they convey this message to Washington, that any strike on Iran, regardless of how limited or how surgical it is going to result in a regional war. Washington is not going to get the message. Therefore, Tehran is looking at these negotiations in terms of its survival as an existential moment.
Yeah, and President Trump has warned that Iran's supreme leader should be worried. I mean, so against the backdrop of this buildup of US military assets in the region, is this just Trump's saber-rattling, or is it something more sinister, like a prelude to all-out war and perhaps regime change?
It could be any of these, all of the above. It is hard to read President Trump's hand, but at the same time, you have to remember, in any kind of serious negotiations, there are pre-negotiations maneuvers, as both sides try to establish their red lines, and they are both engaged in serious psychological warfare. And remember that President Trump is under a lot of pressure domestically to strike and not to strike. People who have supported regime change are pressuring him that Iran is at its weakest point in the past 4 decades, and therefore we have a generational opportunity that we should finish the job. But at the same time, there are powerful forces within the MAGA movement that tells President Trump that you promised not to start another war, and therefore they are pressuring him not to start a war.
And that's an interesting point you make, Mohsen, because we haven't heard much from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the run-up to these talks. But the public debate in Israel seems to be that Iran and its proxies have never been more vulnerable. You just made that point. And the regime's been weakened by massive domestic protests. So does Netanyahu see this as the perfect opportunity for a strike? It may never happen again. Netanyahu needs this big political win in the run-up to Israeli elections later this year.
Yes, he does. And I don't think he has been shy about it. The Israelis have been saying all along that Iran is weak and it is time for us to finish the job. The problem is that Iran might have become weaker in the region, but domestically, there is no evidence that the repressive capabilities of the Islamic Republic have diminished. And therefore, they might have become weaker in the region, but they still have quite a bit of power domestically. And we do not know what is going to happen if there is a strike against Iran. Remember what General Petraeus always used to say: when you're thinking of war, tell me what's going to happen next and tell me how you're going to get out of the war. And therefore, I think the president is being extremely conservative and is trying to make the best in order not to get involved in another endless war in the Middle East.
Mohsen, just a final thought to you. And of course, regional powers like Qatar, Turkey, the Saudis, Omanis are hoping the talks will lead to a deal to avoid another all-out war. What leverage do they have to pressure Iran to make those hard decisions and accept a deal?
They are playing an extremely positive role today. In 2015 and 16, when the nuclear deal was signed between Iran and the 5 global powers, some of the Arab countries were reluctant. They were very suspicious of the deal. However, today, I think most of the Arab countries, I would say all of them, are very worried about the outbreak of another war, and therefore, they're playing a very positive role, not only in terms of pressuring Tehran to come to an agreement, but they are among the most important American allies in the region, and they're pressuring President Trump and the US administration to reach an agreement with Tehran, and I hope all of them succeed.
Mohsen Milani, really good to get your thoughts and your analysis on this issue. Many thanks for your time, Mohsen.
Thank you very much.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.